easy. There we go, I've stopped doing it. That music had probably cost me the whole video. So I have done today using polythermal plastic, so I've made myself 2 fillings. Before I've made fillings in the past, and I mean it wasn't so great, but what I do is I heat it up, pull off the bit I think that fit the actual hole or cavity in your mouth. Important to cleanse it and clean it first. You shouldn't have any bacteria. If you've got bacteria taste inside, you really need to sterilise and clean out that wound, and then when it's settled down you can probably do some work on it. I mean, naturally if you want to go to your dentist, please do. I'm not telling you not to. Just doing some stuff myself, some of my own research. And seeing how it comes, you know, how it works out basically. Trial and error. So I've got a few projects. So yeah, so I use something called, it's like a polythermal plastic. Poly because it can be done multiple times, and all I had to do is put it in a cup of hot water. That softened it up a little bit like the granules. If not, what really does work is if you put it in the microwave. So I put it in the microwave for about a minute, maybe less than that. That's sort of usually, if you want to heat up a cup of tea, you usually whack it at that temperature. So the water starts to bubble a bit, and you've got that. And then when you scoop it out of a spoon, the actual thermal plastics don't feel that hot. They're not as hot as you'd assume they might feel. And so yeah, so they're not bad to work with. And what I do is fill in the hole, and what actually comes out as excess, you can remove that sort of filling that you've created, pull off some of the excess and put it in, and then start moulding it to the shape of your tooth. And as it cools down, then it'll be more pliable, and it works a lot better once it sort of moulds in there. And then you let it just mould itself. It will take a little while because it won't necessarily cool down. You could have a cold water in your mouth, spit that out, swallow it, whatever. I mean, this is sort of like the first stage of potential projects into sort of working out, well, basically with the kind of MGTOW, self-development, whatever you want to call it, self-improvement, adaptation, social adaptation, and all these sorts of things, is that you're looking at things that you're not entirely happy with yourself, that you can improve on. Some things are going to always have a bit of trouble. Like, I'm always going to have a bit of a belly to me, because I'm getting to an age where I tend to put my weight round there, and I don't know what the organs are like under the hood. I'd have to shrink them down to put it all in. There are some things that I'm doing as well, like people, if you're worried about you getting bad backs, or if you've experienced bad back, it's sometimes because you've got a weakness in your core muscles. And so what you need to do is you tighten your stomach muscles before you engage in any kind of lifting and stuff, because you're probably doing it the reverse, is you're pushing outwards and you're using your ribs to act as a brace, basically, but by forcing it outwards. There's 2 techniques in the Chinese. They're called the golden bell and the iron vest, and there's one where you'll be projecting outwards, and so you've got a vest which is where you're pushing outwards, I guess, against forces. But the golden bell is more the internal. The golden bell is more like vacuum strengthening and stuff like that, and some herbs and some other things they work with as well. So yeah, just a different approach really, one's different internal strengthening. You can use both techniques basically, but you might be using them at different stages. It depends if you're moving an object that's at your waist height. If you're carrying an object and you're walking along and your belly sticks out and acts as a rest, like a table or something, that's fine, you wouldn't want to suck it in. But you might tense it as well, so that it's not going to get injured, because you can't have it all sort of like floppy, you know. So these kind of techniques are just like self-improvement, because if you've got a bad back, it throws out performance in all sorts of areas. But if you start to redevelop yourself, that's fine. It's a bit like chin-up bar. Do I have to do loads of chin-ups? What happens if I hold like 20%, 30% of my body weight from my arms, but over a long period of time? So maybe I could set myself new challenges that don't play by other people's rules and play by my own. I could set my challenge. I mean, I was trying to hang on the bar, and so what someone said is, "Blimey, you got a strong arms or a strong grip." I didn't really think that particularly. I was thinking, well, that's because I'm training it and you're not training your grip, which is what's benefiting it a bit. I'm watching a car behind me, and he seems to be speeding up. I'm going at the maximum speed I can go down this road. He's very keen to accelerate. So the teeth is a bit of a project as well. You know, I went to the dentist. They told me there was sorts of damage. I think they've been involved in some cross-infection in the past, because they use the same tool to check that you've got decay, and then they force it into other teeth, into the weak enamel. So what they're doing is they're putting the bacteria across into other teeth, and they say, "Oh, well, that's soft and whatever." I mean, I don't know if that's their profession. The thing is, with a profession, it's about an income, basically. Supplying a service to an income. And so when you're working on your own face or your own projects, you're not held to an income apart from your own. So you do your better job on yourself than you will they will. Just the way it is, really. So yeah, with the polythermal plastics, moulded, let it set, cleaned up my teeth. I prefer bicarbonate soda. I think it's a lot better. It will kill lots of bacteria, and I've had little problems with it. However, it could be so strong it could actually damage your enamel, possibly, but I don't know that. I mean, I can't really tell, to be honest. If I knew about it in the early days, I would have saved a lot of teeth. I would have just used it, and then I would have cleansed it, reduced the bacterial infection. If bacteria gets into the teeth, it can bust them open anyway. That's what's happened because I've had a filling. They did the work, they drilled it, they put a filling in it, and then this dark line started to appear around the side of the tooth, and then it just cracked because that part was dead tooth. It had already gone, basically, and it's just decaying. And you know, there's a healthy root there, so I don't need to rip my root with my teeth out. I don't see much benefit doing that. It's a lot of unnecessary pain, and I'm not going to replace it with another tooth. It'd be different if I was having my teeth pulled out and I was having an implant or something, because then it would be a different story. But I'm not too sure what I think of implants. I've been trying to look for videos for positive reviews and feedback. They show you what an implant is, but no one's saying, "Great, I've had this implant." There was another kind of surgical procedure. You get all your teeth pulled out, and then you get it all implanted in there, and you can have it done in a day. But I think it's pretty extreme. Yeah, I just generally want to improve too. So at the moment I've got these things in. I can sense they're there. They're not uncomfortable because they mould like a glove to my teeth. But it's a kind of stage of development. So I'll leave them in overnight because they are a tight fit. I was eating some toffees. I thought it was going to pop out of the toffee, but they're all right actually. And so I can look at some other development projects in the future, and I can always sort of like shape them down, file them down. So I think my next thing I might get is a little tool that I can use, craft tool, that I can use to sort of sand things, cut things, and do little crafty things. I've got another little idea I'd like to do, and that is to do with bottles. You turn them into glasses. I remember watching something on TV, and it was in Mexico they were talking about, and they said that they had, or there was some country down the end, and basically they recycled bottles so you could have them as glasses. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool? And also the novelty of keeping like the beer labels. So it might be a way I can laminate round it, and so you can have a little cactus thing out of it, or you can have little drinks out of it. So I might play with that, or even sell them. You know, recycle. Have your beer bottle, we turn it into a little glass, and then you sell it to somebody as a sort of novelty item. It's a bit like somebody was doing something with plastics and carrier bags and iron them, and it was reinforced into a sheet or something like that. So, you know, little projects keep you busy. something else I saw today. So let's make my journey into other sorts of, I don't know if it's MGTOW or what sometimes. I guess because it's difficult because I am one, you know, because I've gone my own way. But I try to talk about things I guess I would want people to think about, you know, or I could talk to anyone about. It would be sort of, I mean, they might think, well, that's strange. Why would you want to do that kind of thing, you know, sort of stuff. There's a couple of things we'll talk about actually. So we'll get into. I watched something and it had. It was like 60-minute things that come up, and it talked about cannibal, and this cannibal had basically went on a website as a fantasy, and he said he was looking for a victim, and then these people were on there with like, yeah, I'd love to get eaten, and all these sorts of weird things they had on there. Anyway, someone come forth and wanted to get eaten, so he must have had some mental problems, I'd assume. You know, it's one thing to not enjoy your life. It's another thing to want somebody to gorily kill you, because I don't know what the fantasy would be there, but it could be some sort of masochistic streak in them. I don't know. What would drive somebody to want to be killed by someone else and look for a predator? But then some people have done that. Maybe they're hoping that they'd stop before it goes too far. Because if they really care about me, they won't kill me. And maybe that absolute sort of, I don't know, it's not really love. It's kind of that extremes. You know, it's when people explore some forms of sexuality and they can lose a part of their self, some of their control, and hand it over. There's usually rules, but this is going beyond that. Anyway, so yeah, he basically killed him and he ate him, and then he said, oh, this person's a part of me now. And there's no point looking for remorse in it, because it's just so twisted, it doesn't have anything. It's a bit like, but then equally, I eat animals to survive. And it also highlights the fact that people taste like pigs, and I thought, well, that's quite true. They have a taste quite salty, probably a bit like boar or something, depending on what meat you eat on the person. And then for survival, well, if somebody's already dead, then it's a different story. But if you're looking to do stuff like that to people, it's a bit confusing. And the other thing I'm thinking about is that, do people seek to be victims without thinking about it? Do people go out the way to set themselves up in positions where they become victims? Do people telegraph these signals out? You know, somebody like him might have thought it was a laugh, but he's just too dumb to see out of the box. And so when he set himself up, he might have said, wait, I've changed my mind. It's too late. Chop. or something like that, you know, them kind of situations. People might be groomed into that. And people might assume they deserve things. And that's the kind of society we live in, I'm afraid. Is that there's prey and there's predators. And there's some people that we look to be these things. You know, if you look at some people's fantasies, they're a little bit, well, and then some people, they're playing with it in their mind, but not really thinking about the impact of it. I guess as adults, they need to make their own little choices, but you know, it's just strange sort of stuff. And I just try to understand the psychology in it. I don't want to become either or either. I understand that in extreme circumstances you need to be beyond what would be the social norms, because if you don't, you won't survive a situation. And I understand that because I've watched things where people have had like plane crashes and you're left with these sort of choices. They either die or they eat a dead person, and based on that choice I think, well, better to eat on the dead than to become the dead and then be eaten. So that's one thing. I had an experience in the week where, so talk about strange stuff. We'll move on. Yeah, so I woke up and it was early in the morning, and my eyes couldn't focus, and the darkness was pulsing. It was pulsing. I was disorientated. I couldn't make out the room properly, and I wasn't sure which way round I was in the bed. I suddenly twigged, yeah, you're in your bed, but I'm not too sure if you're actually you're straight or you're sleeping at a sort of diagonally or something. You know, don't roll over. The brain says don't move, figure out where you are first before you start trying to move out of bed, because you might roll into the window or into the wall or something. And I think as I eventually did manage to figure out I was in the room, it was still pulsing. I thought, this is odd. And then I saw this like dark, oh, that's just like crazy driving. You've only got to indicate and wait. Yeah, basically I saw some sort of black figure of some kind, a slightly enlarged head, and it walked through the window. So I don't know if it was a projection from outside and coming inwards, so it could be like a car lights and someone standing in front of them and the shadows projected, they've moved, and it's given the impression of something sliding across. Or did it go into the wardrobe? And then because it was pulsing, I had this kind of revelation in my head, well, what happens if it was coming from you? What happens if you were the doorway? Because, I mean, there's a kind of an inner universe to ourselves. I did this before when I meditated. There was like a level and it had all these beings in it. Them kind of beings at this lower level. They were like the operators in a machine, like the nervous system or something. They were all in some sort of dark cave, just aware they were standing around me, like tuning into me maybe or something, you know? Or I'm just a machine and I'm being controlled by different things. It's just a bizarre thing. So, I mean, some of that abduction experience goes along that. I've mentioned before there was an incident, I don't know if my brother's done it to me. Someone turned me around in my bed, put the sheets around me as tight as possible and the thing, but the bed was made in reverse. So when I woke up, I was thinking, I can barely get my bloody arms out of the covers. And then when I did, I was thinking, well, why am I in the opposite direction? And I was thinking, well, I wouldn't have woken up if someone had moved me. And it was just so weird. And then later, in the future, I read about some people that felt like they'd been abducted or had that experience, but the bed wasn't made correctly. There was something left behind. It was like the clue. Does it make sense? Or they're dressed in clothes that they didn't originally wear. You know, it's like, oh, what am I doing dressed in stuff? Which I could have done like night walking or something. But there's no way I can tuck my own self into my own bed to the point where my arms can't bloody move, like it's a straitjacket. Or it's like to be honest, it's made like if it had straps on the bed and I was strapped in. So yeah, so these unknown entities walked into me. Sometimes I'm aware of thoughts that come into my mind. You know, it's just a choice of language. It's just like I wouldn't talk like that or think like that. And maybe it's just an aspect of myself. You know, there's higher aspects of yourself. There's different characters. There's also I think there's a nasty part of me. It's never come out really, but it's like a bit of rage in there. You know. It sometimes I emulate what it's like if I come home and I saw basically my flat had been robbed and I'd seen one of the robbers in there, this kind of mad response to that situation. You know, I guess that is the that is the dark side of me that I can't see. The more light you put into your life, the more dark you can project somewhere else, like a shadow. It's like the most polar opposite of what you can be. So your potential for one is also increased to the other. And so, you know, I'm not a perfect person by no means. I've got some dark mistakes in my past. I've stepped beyond them. I've redeveloped myself. This is where I was always going into this MGTOW round before it was MGTOW. It just got given the name, that's all. I was just the divorced guy focusing on doing some good, and that was work and trying to give some support to my kids. And then when they went out the picture, it was just to work on myself and carry on working and get through the CSA. And now I'm looking at what the future might hold for me in a different country, romance, money, whatever that gets me into that new zone. The other thing I might look at is Bitcoin as well. I need to look at these currencies. They're ridiculously high at the moment, but something new might come out that could be worth investing in. It's one of the things. Anyway, big sign off and speak to you soon. Bye.